Life for All presents Daily Food Series, Galatians, the Only Gospel, the Gospel of Christ. Title of Book 2, The Hearing of Faith, by Pedro. Week 1, Paul's Faithfulness to the Truth of the Gospel. Sunday, Path to Withstand Pressure. Read with prayer. Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested by God to you by miracles, wonders, and signs, which God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves also know. Acts chapter 2, verse 22. We saw how the church in Jerusalem, which experienced so many miracles in its early days, and became a center of the apostles' work, was lost after the dispersion of Christians triggered by the death of Stephen. The influence of the Judaizers became so strong that Peter could not withstand the pressure exerted by those from the party of James. This gradually caused the appreciation for the prophetic word to be replaced by the old man's effort to practice the law of Moses. The apostles in Jerusalem knew that the gospel for the uncircumcised had been entrusted to Paul, just as the gospel for the circumcised had been entrusted to Peter. In addition to Peter's testimony, the miracles, wonders, and signs that God himself performed through the apostles confirmed this. Acts chapter 2, verse 22 and verse 43. The speaking of an apostle sent by God set the heart on fire and are not mere demonstrations of good rhetoric or Bible knowledge. Paul was not eloquent like Apollos, but his speech was full of the Spirit and power. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. When the two disciples were walking on the road to Emmaus, Jesus appeared to them without being recognized and began explaining the events of the crucifixion from the book of Isaiah. They testified that, while Jesus spoke to them, their hearts burned within them. Luke chapter 24, verse 32. When God calls an apostle, he himself works effectively in that person. So it is not through human ability. In the New Testament, God uses his Spirit to operate in his work. And the man called by him is a vessel, a suitable channel that allows his Spirit to have freedom to carry out his will. Therefore, the path to be able to endure every kind of pressure requires that we understand that we are nothing more than a fragile clay vessel that, nonetheless, contains in themselves the power from the Spirit and the Word. A servant of God does not trust in himself. Trusting in the flesh, that is, trusting in oneself, is the same as returning to the practice of the law. There is nothing wrong with the law itself. The problem lies in our illusion that we are saved by our efforts to practice it. This is the opposite of the truth of the gospel. We cannot always rely on our past experiences, our resume, skills, or personal opinions, because all these follow the same principle of returning to the practice of the law. This is why Paul was so emphatic in this passage. And we have such trust through Christ toward God. Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think of anything as being from ourselves, but our sufficiency is from God, who also made us sufficient as ministers of the new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 4 through 6. This is the new covenant, which depends entirely on the power of the Spirit and the Word. The truth of the gospel is completely tied to the new covenant. This is the path we must follow so that regarding this truth, we would not give up even a millimeter. We are truly weak, but when we practice the word and believe that it is indeed God speaking, we are filled with the power that comes from God. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. God does not need to raise up powerful men like the angelic being Lucifer, created full of beauty, skills, and wisdom. Even so, he fell. God did not create us that way. We were created as fragile human beings, but with the capacity to receive the Mighty One, God Himself. Therefore, we must recognize our inability and not trust in ourselves but in God, who has the power to accomplish His work. If we live this way, we will never give in to the pressures to renounce the truth of the gospel. We will be firm, absolute, and fearless. We will never retreat.